Okay, good morning. Well, it's good morning. It is 11:15. I believe it's November. See, 2, 3, probably 4. November 4, 2024. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to try to talk a little about things that have to do with European philosophy, European theology, European history, and this is, quite a few months ago, I said that I was going to be working on something called History of England and Western Europe. I think it further stating from the last post-glacial maximum or something like that, the end of the Ice Age 100,000 years ago, to the beginning of the the end of the 19th century. So I did some work on that, and then I said, well, I'll be back. It's been a long time. And although there's been many a time that I thought that, well, I'd like to get this on that. And so now I'm going to try and do that. And so this video, will have to do with that. And I've pointed out this book once before. Let's see, it's Chapters in Western Civilization, Volume 1, Columbia University Press, and this was published in it doesn't say here the date. No, it does, 1948, and it's got a lot of detailed information. It's kind of book even a real historian would probably make reference to. So what I want to do right off the bat, I'm going to say, if you want to know about the Reformation and the antagonistic behaviors that were made in, I want to say, the late 16th century, maybe early 17th century, but there's a directly quoted 2 or more pages in this book, and the quotes are from a professor, Troeltsch, Troeltsch. Is a page and a half and another page and a little more. So about 3 full pages, totally quoted. It has to do primarily with what the Lutheranism and Calvinism did to the social structure of Europe, and I would have to say primarily in the German areas, what they did and how they did it, working in conjunction with the theories and the practices of capitalism, which was just coming to the fore at the time. Although, depending on where you're reading, you may find reference to capitalism, 13th century, maybe even earlier. But what really caught my eye was that in this 2 or 3 page of direct quotation from this professor, I mean, he makes capitalism out to be an extremely, extremely bad part of what we've become. So, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but somewhere in here embedded is a very derogatory remark about capitalism and how Lutheranism and Calvinism got right behind it and was supporting it. I mean, part of what I started to recall when I read this is that in their minds, it could be no greater good than a bunch of people posing as the working class and doing all the crap stuff for the higher ups, which would have been your big shots in those religious structures of those so-called faiths. So there goes the postman. Oh, look, he's stopping in front of my house. All right, listen, is he bringing me a package? I don't know, I'll tell you later. But so all this was going on, and it didn't just, happen overnight. None of this stuff ever does. And I highly recommend trying to get this book. It might probably be a little difficult, but trying to get it and go to that quote. It's on page 2. Oh, God. Yeah, the postman's coming. Going on page 220, 221, 223, and the top part of 220, 221, 222, and the top part of 233. Read that entire lift from this professor Troeltsch. Wow, that guy was fast, man. He got back out in his truck and he's gone. All right, so read that, and I believe it's very eye-opening that that these things that were considered aspects of godliness and reverent religious expressions were at their essence an attempt at greedy businessmen trying to get more and trying to create the impression that there's nothing greater on this earth than bunches of people being working class. Like that's the greatest thing you can aspire to. And of course, they knew full and well that if you can come up with a theory, put it out there for the masses, and they'll all buy into it, and they'll all think and be talking to their friends about how wonderful it is to be part of the working class. And talk about the relevancy of in today's world. Now, this was let's say this was 1606, whatever it is I'm talking about. So you got to fast forward 400 or more years, and we got, whole nations appealing to people who are stuck in the abstract rational or philosophy of social structure. They're caught in this type of living and class structure that we note as the working class, and that you couldn't be more happier than to be part of the working class and having yourself a real job. I mean, that's what dreams are made of, you know. It can be part of that working class, get up every day, do the same old thing over and over, until you drop dead. But that's what this book implies, and I've been reading this book. I'm up to in the 200s, reading it very slowly. But if you do get it, it is a good reference book, I believe, on the intellectual history of Europe, Western Europe, England. It's mostly about the intellectual history, and you have to fit into that all the religious upheavals and some of the wars, but it's really mostly about what these guys were thinking back then. And this one, they leaves off pretty definite that this is the way things are, and this is the way they should be, So that being said, as part of this ongoing process, trying to understand how the war works, of course, I'm reading other books. And I picked up one by Jared, probably Diamond. I think I've mentioned this before. This one is the Third Chimpanzee. And I've been reading that, and in this book too. I mean, he does a magnificent job of explaining language and how languages came to be. Indo-European, Proto-Indo-European, all these languages. He does a wonderful job in relaying to us, the less knowledgeable, of course, some of the aspects of how languages develop, particularly the languages that can trace their origins to Indo-European root, which is probably somewhere around 15 major languages, and then all sorts of branches off those Indo-European, including, he does a fairly decent job of introducing the concept of Proto-Indo-European. Now, just not to confuse the two books, we're talking about the Third Chimpanzee, and the author being Diamond, Jared Diamond. And this book has nailed down for me some of my concerns about where all of us came from. Recently, there's been a lot of baloney going out, and they just give you the bare minimum factual part of the discussion that everybody came out of Africa. What they don't tell you is that was 1 million years ago, when it was still Homo erectus. They came out, and it's probably the only example of where all the Homos homos came from. 1,000,000 years ago, Homo erectus, we weren't even people yet. But the word on the street is that, oh, life, civilization came out of Africa. Not so, not so. You know, that event, the coming out of Africa, happened many times. They went out, they traveled around, they came back, they traveled around, they came back, they traveled around, traveled all over the place. All right? They didn't even need a passport then. They just went. What's also interesting to me is that the when they came out, I think the last few times and went around, you know, there were vast numbers of people that were left on the ground in Europe and the areas that I was concerned with. Europe, the Southeast Asia, Australia, Polynesia. There were lots of people still on the ground. All right? And certainly what I just mentioned, Australia, Polynesia, I mean, what these other folks are talking about, that everybody came from Africa, I mean, Australia, Polynesian have nothing to do with that, okay? What they're talking about is migrations after the last ice age that came up, as you well know, out of Siberia, across the Bering Strait, into Alaska, down a corridor in western North America at about 11,000 or so years ago. And they traveled down that corridor. Either side of them was still the ice mass, the glacier. But this one corridor was open to them. I think they followed the large mammals that they were hunting. And they got right down to places like Canada, United States, and all the way down, and essentially all the way down to Patagonia, the tip of South America. And they did that in 1,000 years, which some writers consider that to be remarkable, and I do too. I mean, this was no walk in the park. And they did that, and of course, they did that with stone tools, stone axe, stone knife, stone arrow tips. They had to kill large animals to do that. Large mammals, large mammoths, large bears, large saber-toothed tigers, many large animals. And they did it, some writers suggest they were able to do it because there was more than one hunter who would get together and hunt down the beast, which I kind of ascribe to that theory too. I mean, come on. I think if you're one Homo sapien, I don't think you're going to have much of a chance against something the size of an elephant. Anyway, what does this have to do with what I was talking about? Well, what it has to do with what I was talking about is primarily what has got my attention is, how did we all really get here, you know? How? Well, you know, part of it is like some of the recent so-called people in the know are proposing that we all came from Africa. Well, we all didn't come from Africa 40,000 years ago, or even 100,000 years ago. We came from Africa, all of us, 1,000,000 years ago. And we stayed in Europe, and we stayed in the Middle East, and we stayed in a lot of places. We didn't stay in North America, though. That place never got any human beings, okay, until they came over the Bering Strait. land bridge. And then they came, and like I said, when they did come, they came, they went, they came, they went in and out of Africa, all over the place. And the bottom line is that by 40 or 50,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, they were Homo sapien-like animals, mammals, primates, Homo sapien-like, and with some of the characteristic traits of civilization, dispersed all over the landmass of Eurasia, dispersed all over it. So I think that's a better way of looking at how we got here. We got here because we were here, first of all, over a very, very long period of time. And we had the beginning scratches of civilization. We had a desire, an innate desire to be social, to cooperate. We had all this stuff. Doesn't mean we were a bunch of pansies all trying to be, happy with everybody. No, we were still very, very aggressive, very real quick to jump at a transgressor and bring them down. We were still into that at a big time. But we were starting to get some of the traits that go hand in hand with civilization. For example, one that jumps out is the desire to give your offspring some of your knowledge, give them a head start in the world, So they started living close together for longer periods of times in a village or a town-like structure. And this information that I'm getting, I'm just rambling here, but it's information that I pretty much have garnered from many different sources, which I kind of like that because I'm not leaning on any one particular piece of evidence that says we did this or we did that. That million-year thing, I was reading that number when I was still in college, which is so long ago. It's unimaginable that I actually lived that long, But seemingly I did, because I'm still here. And one of the figures from all that paleontology is the lady Lucy. I think she was like 2.3 million years old, just a tiny bit of a thing, maybe 3 feet at most, tiny little thing. I forget what particular type of Homo she was, but so that's 2.3 or 3 million years ago, and all this time, eventually 1 million years ago, they leave Africa. So that's probably where they all were. They started going out and checking out the neighborhood. They got themselves up in the area of China, Mongolia, Europe, Scandinavia, all over the place. And I would propose that there's really no one individual source where we can say, well, that's where the gene pool came from. The gene pool came from location A. I would say more, to my way of thinking anyway, is that the gene pool came from site A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Many, many sites, many blendings, many mutations, you know. And finally, a very brief moment ago, the end result was something that looks like us and thinks like us and acts like us in most cases. So be very, very leery about what you read and question everything. Question everything. Particularly if whatever it is you're reading, they're coming on to you like they're the end all and the be all of knowledge. Because if that's the way they're coming on to you, be very leery of that. So the third chimpanzees, of course, the other couple of books by Diamond. One's called Guns, Ammo, and Steel, I believe, and another one is called Collapse. Now, before I read the third chimpanzee, I had read Collapse, and I was impressed with Collapse. I'm impressed with the third chimpanzee, too. And one of the reasons I'm impressed is this guy, Diamond. He has the ability to make this stuff appear so simplistic that anybody can understand it. You don't need to be a wizard. Years ago, I can't tell you how long ago, I was in school, and the one subject that really impressed me was linguistics. I wanted to become a language scholar. Don't ask me how I got that idea. I must have been out of my mind. But every time I would try to get into it, the opening books and text on this stuff were always so confusing. And I couldn't seem to get any traction. Traction was not going to happen. So, over the years, I learned brief ideas about language and how it propagated all over the planet. About places like South America that have 1,000 languages and stuff like that. And one of the interesting facts about South America is, I believe, is that they, at one time, not too distant past, maybe 20 years ago, I read a little factoid that they had in South America, or maybe just in Brazil, more daily newspapers in different languages than any other place on the planet. They kept their individual languages, which is kind of very thought-provoking, You get the idea that these people really appreciated who they were and what they were bringing to the table. Their uniqueness was special, and they thought it worthy of remaining known and being part of everyday life. However, as you know, the tendency of the colonizers and the folks that would gather up everybody and make them workers of the state. Those folks, they want everybody to be the same. And that's all they want. They want to be able to know, well, if I'm talking about 100 million people, I know what I'm talking about. They're going to behave like this, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. I want to know that. Don't give me any discrepancies, variations. I'm not into that. I want to know. I want a transaction. I want a proven result. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for any eccentricities. So, and we're getting that way, You look at the world now, and you look at the world the way it was at the end of World War II, you would think we went to Mars, some places, some places. You can't recognize the two places. You can't. Unless you happen to be in one of the poor areas of the world. You know, they still look the same. So nobody cares about the poor people. And why should they? You're not going to make a profit there. And that's what the world builders are all about. They're all about making a profit. Making a profit, you know. And now more and more they're trying to make themselves out to be social vanguards. They're about as concerning for social welfare as a dog is for a kitten. It ain't happening. They don't care. And let me tell you, you just can't care by saying you care and sending some money to the do-good foundation of the day. You have to care in your heart. In your heart. And that's not happening with these people. No, it's not. No, it's not. So anyway, I'll shut up. I did want to make sure I mentioned those 3 or 4 pages in this book, Chapters in Western Civilization, Columbia University Press, approximately 1948 publication. And I wanted to mention about Diamond's book, The Third Chimpanzee. You know, the whole book, it only gets into the language thing in the last quarter of the book. Before that, he gets a lot of explanation about how chimpanzees, there's three types. There's a pygmy, there's the gorilla type, and then there's the common chimpanzee. The common chimpanzee has more aberrations and more deficiencies than you could shake a stick at. I mean, they, unlike the other ones, will kill each other. So you can make a little table, little chart where these 3 different chimpanzees mimic each other, resemble each other, you know, and you'll get no checks that they do resemble us on the pygmy or the gorilla. But common chimpanzee, it'll be check, 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 you know. So, and that's why chimpanzees bite people's faces off. You know, what could these people be thinking? You know, do human beings have brains? If anybody knows the answer to that, could you please forward the answer to me? I'd really like to know. I mean, just in the in the case of pets, look into that. You can't believe what people keep as pets. The problem with, I think, with our society is that we've been too ready to let people do whatever they want to do. You know, that's the sacrosanct theory. We live in a free world, and people can do whatever they want to do. Doesn't matter if they harm themselves or they harm others. They're free to do what they want to do. Just insane. And there's been many a civilization that from far away looks very totalitarian or very controlling. And the civilization I'm thinking about is China, 600 BC, 800 BC, when Confucius told everybody, you know, honor your mother and your father. And boy, did they buy into that big time. But, you know, certainly he wasn't promoting any sort of totalitarianism. The Noah guys, you know, that's what they promote, but Confucius wasn't. And I'm not either, you know, come on. But you you have to be able to discriminate what's you should do and what you shouldn't do. I want to almost say between right and wrong, but then you'll get into a whole other argument. Who's to say what's right and wrong? But you should be able to discriminate what you should do, what you shouldn't do. For example, if you see animals eating a certain plant, and then before too long they drop dead, you should come up with the idea that I better be a little discerning here. I better be a little discreet. I should show some discrimination and not eat this plant, you know? Discrimination could be a good thing. But lo and behold, right now, discrimination is the worst thing on the planet. So we get children growing up thinking they can do whatever they want, and then they get lost. The parents can't find them. The parents are crying, and then you find out that the parents let them do anything they wanted to do because they're going through a phase. They'll get through it. They're smart kids, and they never see them again. But that's the world we live in. Now, tell me to shut up. I will. I promise. All right. See you next time.